Hello, my name is McDonald, and I'm delighted to be joining you in Fingal Libraries for the right time. The month of September is a fantastic month for creativity, and I'll be reading to you today from my debut collection, Crow's Books, which was published in March of this year by Shouk Press, based in Baldoyle. And thank you so much to them for all their patience. If I'm really honest, it probably took 20 years to get this collection together, so please don't be disheartened if you're starting out. You will get there, you just have to keep going. And I'm going to read you a selection of poems, but starting with the one that's the very end of the book, which was a poem written for the pandemic, in the pandemic. And it's called One Piece Missing. She built a bird feeder, I made a jigsaw. And over weeks and days, we found our ways to be together, trial run at empty nest syndrome. It's gone pretty well so far, except for one or two minor details. The cat eyeballs the pigeons when they attempt to feed, and my jigsaw has one piece missing. What are the chances that the Christmas present that lived for months under the couch and on the floor and was shortlisted at one stage by the front door for the SVP would have a piece gone AWOL? 1 in 1,000, actually. The bird feeder is full of nuts and seeds, and the pigeons make it to the plant outside the window. One small step is all it takes to make the balcony. One small piece is all it takes to make the jigsaw. A piece I fear has long since been consumed by the settee or the hoover or the same cat who dares the pigeons to take a chance. This might be our last dance before the world returns to being busy and important, and time is measured again by productivity, not pleasure. When the world and we look back at how we spent our hours and days and try to count the ways we used to make something of the lockdown, I will smile at black and white and brown pieces of a puzzle made without hurry or a flurry of activity. And I hope I would not forget how precious was the time we spent. In future days, when reminiscing, I will remember the 999 pieces that were there, not the one piece missing. And that poem I'm very proud of having the great good fortune to have it included in the Cavan County Diary of a Pandemic exhibition. So big thanks to the team up there as well. Now, many of my poems are based on true life experience, and I tend to write about life as I live it. And this next poem was written about a journey that my husband took. He was a crew member on a boat called the Caledonia Rose, which fished out of Howth for many years. And then one day they were called back to shore, and as is custom, bad news is not delivered while the boat is at sea. And this is the story of the journey and how difficult it was for the men coming back to sea. It's called 3 Hours Out. We got the call 3 hours out to sea, and I know that we were thinking all the same. I wonder, is it him or is it me? We had no choice but wait the hours out with endless cigarettes and cups of tea and news too harsh for radio to explain. I hoped that it was them and wasn't me. We made talk so small it meant nothing. The haul we got, the time we lost the nets, when I won the each way bet, but still the time dragged every minute single out of 3 excruciating hours, coated in the sour smell of oilskins mixed with salt. I listed all the possibles for heartache, knowing each man counted out the same. Was the family affected theirs or was it ours? Strong men rendered naked in the rain. As we turned for home and braced against the wind, a small crowd gathered silent on the quay, and my head spun somewhere between fear and hope. I wished that it was them and wasn't me. Then our hearts broke for the man whose news it was. As hands reached down to haul him from the deck, words whispered on the winds were cot and death. Feeling glad, then sickened with the shame, but knowing it was not my news to claim. We got the call 3 hours out to sea, then I wished it wasn't him, that it was me. And that poem is dedicated to baby Ryan Minto, He was born on the 18th of April 1996 and died in June 96, aged just 9.5 weeks. So the next poem I'm going to read to you is about my mother, Peggy, who passed away a couple of years ago, but she had a massive stroke at 62 and dementia, as often happens, set in after that. And she had an extraordinary gift for just remembering single things about people, and she didn't have much patience when people didn't remember them back. And this is written about a true story. My cousin Roisin ate brack that my mother was really looking forward to one night when we were young. My mother never forgot and Roisin never remembered. And this is called Peggy's brack. Do you not remember the night you ate the brack? The night she came home cold and tired from work and put the kettle on? It was November and the pump had burst in the hot press. The house was freezing and there was very little butter left, and you put it on the last slice of brack. She ran amok. Threw us all out of the house. We had to go to your house. Do you not remember? Can you not just pretend that you remember about the brack? She gets confused, I know, but to be fair to her, it really did happen. And she gets upset when she gets confused. And are you sure you don't remember? Would it matter if you played along? You'll never see her after this. She might give you a slap or a kiss, and depending on how her brain is working on the day. Would it really kill you to visit for a chat about when we were all teenagers and she used to work nights and all the fights and arguments about the dishes in the sink? Just let her think that you remember. I'll be there, you needn't worry. She's not usually violent, only when she gets confused, but she is right on this score. You definitely ate the brack. We'll be in and out in no time. And I'm sad that you don't or won't remember about the brack. It's all she can remember about you. And Peggy was a force to be reckoned with. And when she died, even though we had a long, long time to prepare, we were never prepared, and I don't think anybody ever is. And some of the things that are left around my house are things that Peggy had and things that when I look at them I remember her. And it's a constant battle wondering what to throw out and what to keep. And this next poem was written just exactly about the ordinary everyday things that hold memories precious for us. And it's called Precious Treasure. You see an aluminium steamer knocked about by life and dulled with age, no use now for draining past her, and fit for throwing out a long time since. I see my mother's hand chopping cabbage with a saucer, raw from washing dishes, her wedding ring tight on a swollen finger. You see a pot with wonky handles that burns your hand when it gets too hot and takes up too much room in the kitchen cupboards. I see a ham being boiled for Easter Sunday in our kitchen, and the sunlight makes the steam a magic carpet. And you see a plastic child's tiara, cheap and chipped and dulled by sunlight. I see a duchess with dementia, smiling at her public, being there but also gone already far from us on my mother's 83rd birthday. You see old and broken tin and plastic. I see precious treasure. And that's Peggy probably would have thrown them out herself if she was here. And one of the lovely things that's happened in my life, which I never expected to, was the place we played as children was called Piltown Woods. And it has been over time turned into a graveyard. And both my parents are buried there. And although it sounds sad, it's actually a really beautiful, peaceful place. But my mother always told me that pine cones were Crow's books, and I had no reason to doubt her. So I was probably 8 or 9 years of age before I realised that they were actually not Crow's books. But this is where the title of the poetry book came from, because I always remembered as a child being so totally gullible. And I sometimes wish that we could have that as adults, that lovely sense of wonder. And this is the title poem, called Crow's Books. We watched the flight of 100 crows, squawk their way to the sky-high trees. My mother said, "They're birds coming home from school." We rambled on in the dusk, damp woods, and a pine cone lay under rusty leaves. My mother laughed and said, "One of them aged crows has dropped his book." The pine cone sits on a rough-hewn desk, and when I hold it now, I am again 4 years old, and hear my mother's voice saying, "Sure, there's always crows' books in Piltown." And now I'd like to read you a poem that came third in the Strokestown International Poetry Competition. And like I said earlier, it's taken me a long time to win a prize in Strokestown, I think over 15 years. So if anybody is out there feeling that they're getting rejected or that their poems aren't getting placed, just keep going. That's all you can do. And I was very, very proud to have this poem featured. It's a poem that is written, it's my attempt to understand what it's like for families who have had somebody go missing. And in Ireland, there's 5,000 people go missing every year, which is a huge amount for a small country. And this poem is dedicated to May Ann Brady, whose son left home one day and just never came back. It's called Whose Coat? The coat in the hall is threadbare now. After 27 years, I still stop and stare at it, willing it to tell me what it knows. To tell me where you are or where you went when you went missing. Still hung on the same hook, the same sci-fi book poking out of the left pocket, a half-empty pack of amber leaf on the right. At night I touch the frayed edges of the sleeve and hear again your words above the clang of metal on the gate. "Don't wait up, ma'am, I'll be late." Then you were gone. The echoes of that metal jangle still rankle as a last post and chorus for a lost song. And I will never know if the river was your bed, or if your limbs are still entwined around some broken scrap of metal or pipe of lead dug deep into the mud somewhere. All I know is that I should have known. You see, you never would have left the coat. There are days I want a grave to kneel at, to dig my fingers into wet clay and to know your bones and flesh are sleeping now at rest. But I always knew even the best of days were still too difficult for you. And other days I wait and watch the road where you walked 100 yards to get the school bus. As a child, you thought cobwebs were made of silver, and I never told you otherwise. Now, there is only us. I look to see a blue ridge of gelled hair and the rattle of a bicycle chain slung low around your waist. Black eyeliner was in poor taste for a boy, according to your father. He left too, but not like you did. He sits by day at the windowsill, waiting, wiping fogged up glass with bated breath and woolen elbows. His thoughts mixed up with memories and bits of things, and I sometimes think he knows, and then he stands and asks, "Is Aidan in yet?" On his way to bed he touches the coat, and he tells me that he never read a science fiction book. And with a tender goodnight kiss he asks me every single night, "Whose coat is this?" So the next poem I'm going to read for you is a poem that I'm going to dedicate to my father, because my mother features very prominently in a lot of these poems. And my father died this time last year. We were very fortunate, unlike many families, we had a break in the COVID restrictions, so we were able to celebrate his life. But before he died, he was quite unique. He ordered a suit from Louis Copeland in a colour that he saw Tony Blair and Elvis wearing, which he called Air Force Blue. So Louis Copeland obliged. It took a while. He got the suit made for Dad, and Dad went to his maker wearing his Air Force Blue suit. But he stayed. He was born, he lived, and he died in the area that he loved. And this is my poem to Eamon. and it's called Air Force Blue. It's a rare and special gift to stay forever proud of who you are and where it is you came from. To live all your days near familiar roads and fields, and to know the branch of every tree and the notes of every bird's song. To embrace the new and yet hold dear the memory of those you loved and knew, who walked those same familiar roads before you. To recall the way that things were done when you were young and pass those stories down, each one a special treasure, one by one. It's a rare and special man who stays forever proud of how his family grew. We always knew how much you cherished people close around you. And it's not many men can cut a dash like you could in Air Force Blue. It's a rare and special life that's lived to the last, full and true, and although your time with us is past, your legacy will live as a man who had much to share and much to give, and for that we say, Céad Míle Buíochas, Amen. Now I recognise the bird's song on the branch of every tree, and rest easy now, a legend to us you will always be. And I think you would be delighted to be included in the Fingal Right Time month of September. You would have been very impressed. So the next poem I'm going to read to you is called Harold in the Hospice. And one of the things that I've thought a lot about is my children are grown now. And when I was young, I thought that old people, I don't know, they just became old without living their lives. And the one thing I learned as I grow older is that people live the most extraordinary lives. And we had the great good fortune to have Mum looked after very well, and then consequently Dad, in nursing homes. And going in and out, you would meet people who were in the later years of their lives and many in the last years of their lives. And they were extraordinary people. They lived in the 70s, they lived in the 60s, And this is called Harold in the Hospice, and it's dedicated to Harold, who made me laugh more times than I would ever care to admit when I visited him. It made him tired to think about putting his teeth to bite an apple. He didn't care if he took a pill or not. The pills they gave him now were for his bowels. He wondered if the nurse had ever taken acid. Or did the Filipino orderly who always smiled ever climb a tree at dawn high on coke to see if he could hear electricity? Did the doctor ever smoke a joint or eat a brownie before the entrance exam for the civil service? No one was more surprised than Harold himself when he got that job. Stamping forms in sandals and a cheesecloth shirt, a head like Hollyhead on Mondays, coked off his tits in Harcourt Street on Fridays, getting locked into the downstairs bathroom of Chivago's, which was walled with mirrors, sent him off the cliff edge one time. They called it a once-off psychotic episode. Locked him in St. Eata's for a week. Truth be told, Harold was glad of the rest. Crawling into the luggage space of an intercity bus leaving Dublin to start a new life as a cobbler in Belfast was a great idea at the time. Fueled by drinking absinthe and smoking weed, freed by an overweight, overwrought bus driver, Harold hitchhiked home from Drogheda at midnight. The damage to his lungs from the diesel was severe. The hospice comfort dog was a cross between a St. Bernard and a Labrador. His eyes looked straight ahead at bony yellowed hands and the almost dead, who stroked his back and pulled his ears. His name was Titan, and he was commonly known to have the patience of a saint. But Harold wondered if there was days when Titan thought, fuck this, the kip is full of sick people. So he called a mongrel to his bedside, and in a last act of defiance or enlightenment, he slipped the dog a Valium. So the last poem I'm going to leave you with is one dedicated to all the women in the audience, and I've researched this phenomenon in Meath, Louth, Cavan and Monaghan and beyond, and it's dedicated to every woman who ever had to use the toilets in a pub, and it's very simply called Jack's. You know the feeling when you want to go and he's enwrapped in stretching conversation and you wait for hours for pause or punctuation, and when it comes you say politely, if somewhat sharply, listen here, I have to go to the Jacks. Hoping something will hold it in till you find the loo, you get there fit to burst and find a bursting red face cross-legged queue. And so we females exercise our amazing ability not to burst. By various positions of the legs, crossed, knotted, shifting the weight from one to the other, your bladder feels like Frisian's udder when the milking machine breaks down or there's a power cut. I tell you girls, it's really tough. And in a brilliant attempt at mind over matter, you join in gossip's delirious chatter of fellow sufferers, until at last the toilet's empty. Rush in, bang door, kicks down, then you notice there's no lock. Okay, so you hold the door with one hand, stretched 3 inches longer than its normal length, and squat. Never ever sit on the bowl. Now, because your jeans were tight and your position is unnaturally elongated on account of the door, your aim deflects, but you can't stop 4 pints and 2 gins, the force of which is producing enough electricity to do a £7 wash on a short spin. Then you begin the hapless search under the bowl and on the floor, and this is very difficult when you're squatting with one hand still holding the door, and your heart sinks. You realise there's none. Not a square, not a scrap, not even a cardboard holder, and so you almost dislocate your shoulder as, with one hand still holding the door, you yank your jeans up and your knickers roll into a rope around the top of your legs like they did when you went swimming in Skerries and didn't dry yourself enough. Like I said, girls, it's tough. The electric shock of a wet waistband means the shirt you so meticulously tucked in when dressing will hopefully hang outside and be long enough to prevent people guessing if you've wet yourself. Now, some of us have tried to make a stand on this issue. We've put off performance, marched defiantly to the bar and asked for some toilet tissue. Certainly, ma'am, the barman says. Will you be wanting that with ice and lemon? He and his cronies pissed themselves laughing, if you pardon the pun, and then he hands you a catering bale of Andrex. So, you take the rolls, cross the room, trying to look nonchalantly cool, feeling like an Egypt till you reach it, ladies' loo, complete with queue, then it's you, then you're in. Bang the door, nicks down, arm out, paper ready, but you can't go. Nothing. Not a drop, not a trickle. Cold sweat and then a lone, pathetic dribble after all that. When this happened to me, I heard a woman next door grumble and fumble and feel on the floor. Do you want paper? I shouted, my voice getting higher. Paper, she said, I need a fucking hairdryer. Now, I know the paper's made from trees and people are genuinely worried about the slaughter of the tropics, which is affecting the ozone and messing up the weather. But if this happens to you, I'd humbly suggest you use half a roll for spite and badness, put a wad inside your pocket in case you get caught short on the way home. And girls, you might as well lash back the pints and drown in the gin, because with the Jacks in the pub, a woman can't win. So thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure to be part of this festival. I've been reading from Crow's books and I hope to see you very soon at some of our workshops. Thank you.